When I opened my eyes, I found you. When I opened my eyes, I found you.
Stylish, innovative.
Published by Dublin's eclectic and occasionally quite daring Liberties Press, Edge of Heaven by debut science fiction novelist R.B. Kelly is set about 100 years into the future in the book's imagined version of a future France in a newly constructed city called Creobas. Fans of high-tech urban dystopia, a la J.G. Ballard and certain works of Philip K. Dick, for example, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, will certainly be very interested and enjoy the read they get out of Edge of Heaven by R.B. Kelly. Turning to the book, Edge of Heaven, well, let's just say if Creobas, the city of Creobas, were a real place, it wouldn't be somewhere you'd want to go on holidays. It has ultra high-rise buildings which are prone to sudden collapse. Its crowded ghettos are routinely swept by plague. There's always a riot. Most nights there's a fire. Explosions are fairly common too. An artificial intelligent revolt, a robot revolt, or a hybrid organic robot revolt, as the Amazonauts are in this book, is pushed to desperate terroristic extremes by brutal repression. Rogue paramilitary police units with the power to shoot suspects on sight, no questions asked, are roaming the streets of Creobas, and behind it all, shadowy corporations and iniquitous governments deciding everything without any reference to the popular will, so to speak. It's a heady and rather gloomy mixture, full of tension and full of shock. But, and I think this is a problem that dystopian fiction writers have had for some time now, no matter how bad a city you conjure in your imagination, it's always going to be a pretty nice place to live, a holiday really, compared to living in, say, Aleppo or Sana or even downtown Denver in the US, when the cops are in trigger happy form. So the nightmare that they produce of the future would take, you know, it's not going to beat the nightmare of the present or the nightmare of the past. So I think that's an issue for dystopian science fiction writers. All of these crises happening at once, the AI revolt, the plague, economic collapse, and so on and so forth. There's a lot to be said for this cascade of interlinking and mutually magnifying crises in terms of verisimilitude, of course, that we find in Edge of Heaven, knitted together very well by the writer. Quite a lot of balls to juggle in terms of plot in this book, but R.B. Kelly does really well, I think, in terms of knitting them together. Surely it's evident in real life, if you like, that when a society is really falling apart, it is a result of sort of a poly-crisis, many crises happening together and magnifying each other, rather than one single catastrophic factor explaining everything. That would be too simple altogether. So there's a complexity to the plot and to the concept and to the understanding of the way that societies work and operate and fall apart in this book, which does a lot of credit to the author, and hats off to her again for keeping all those balls in the air. I also like that this book is about what we can confidently call the proletarians of Creobas and their struggle against dark governmental and corporate forces. Feels a bit like Greystones, County Wicklow sometimes where I live, or anywhere in the world really. One criticism I would have is that the characters ought to seem to speak in a homogenous kind of English, except for the police who speak French, interestingly, you know, but quite good and posh French. There's no sense of the diverse accents, inflections, vocabulary that you would find in a true urban culture melting pot, which means that the book, at the end of the day, lacks a certain credibility in that department. I don't know why it is, but no matter how much pressure these characters come under in their inner city, you know, downtrodden, pressured, edge of death lives all the time, no matter how much pressure they come under, they never curse. I think spicier and therefore more credible language might have improved the dialogue considerably. The dialogue is often just functional, and you know, it doesn't really add to the experience of the book. And of course, Creobas's topography of urban apocalypse, isn't that hard to pronounce, is recognisably present day in many respects. It's as if so many of the problems and catastrophes nipping away at the edges of our societies, our Ebolas, our collapsing banks, all of that kind of thing, all erupted at once and produced this massive apocalyptic revolutionary crisis, if you like. There are strong echoes of the ghettoisation and ill-treatment of Muslims in Europe today, in the particular particular way that the Amizonauts, the A-nauts, that is the rebel AI units, are treated by society and by the government and the police and so on. The whole community of A-nauts being persecuted for the activities of a relative handful of militant insurgents. So we'll recognise that, I think. It's a book in many ways, I think, about present-day Europe and all the crisscrossing tensions, very much real and present in today's Europe, as much as it is a book about a city 100 years into the future. The theme of survival, which I think is a very interesting theme that runs through a lot of science fiction, is also and also the theme, which is also the theme of adaptation, runs throughout Edge of Heaven. What kind of character do you need to be to survive, such a horrible, deadly situation? You need to be tough, flexible, cunning, and above all, I guess, lucky. Besides this, the theme of love across the barricades is also present. The lovers at the centre of the book are Danae and Boston Toro. Danae is an A-naught, kind of a hybrid human and artificial intelligence, and Boston Toro is a human being, and they love each other. And I guess R.B. Kelly is a Northern Irish writer, and I guess it's a charming and attractive concept for somebody writing in Northern Ireland. There's a big team in Northern Irish literature, certainly from the 1970s, 80s, 90s, literary fiction of love across the barricades, of people loving each other from opposing sides of a civil conflict. And, we can read that sort of Northern Irish side into it. And certainly the snarkiness and, the kind of sarky wit which defines the relationship between Danae and between Danae and Boston, or Toro as he's also known, seems to me to be Northern Irish, very much Northern Irish wit and humour and relationship interaction. That's a nice part of the book, the love affair between those two, which carries on for most of the book and drives the plot forward. Them trying to help each other and trying to save each other is the sort of dynamic engine at the centre of the plot. The present action of the book is broken up between chapters by interspersed newspaper reports and the likes of that from the defeated A-naught revolt of 50 years previously, took place in the 2070s, the long-term consequences of which are being played out in the present drama of the book. Besides filling in the backstory, these bite-sized segments serve to break up the quite lengthy text, which can be a bit chunky at times. The exposition, by which I mean the background info between events or nodes of dialogue in Edge of Heaven, is sometimes frustratingly long-winded. But again, as a reader, I don't have a lot of patience for exposition. There's people who are, a lot of people like a lot of exposition, a lot of background information, not something I have a lot of patience for as a reader. Lots of it here. Perhaps that's the reason why my favourite sci-fi writers would be kind of short novel writers, people like K. Dick and Ballard and M. John Harrison and so on and so forth. My favourite, and I think the most memorable aspect of this book is the very, very beautiful descriptive passages. I could read a whole book of such descriptions of the urban landscapes in particular with great pleasure. And if R.B. Kelly were to write her own version of Italo Calvino's Invisible Cities, which is all description of imaginary cities and is unsullied by the distraction of plot, I'd certainly be the first one to buy it. So, congratulations on this debut science fiction novel from R.B. Kelly. I wish her the best of luck for it. I enjoyed the read. I would have criticisms around dialogue and exposition, but on the other hand, this is a book that I am certain fans of sci-fi and particularly fans of near future urban dystopia, which is a fairly well established genre, and this fits quite comfortably into that genre and is very aware of the tropes and does her own interpretation of them as well. In fairness, I would recommend it to fans of sci-fi. For the general reader, I'm not too sure, but for fans of sci-fi, definitely give it a go and maybe support this new Irish writer doing something quite daring, and the publisher doing something quite daring as well, which is publishing a long, hard sci-fi novel. So I'm sure you would enjoy it if you're a sci-fi fan. And thanks very much. This is Dave Lordan reviewing R.B. Kelly, published by Liberties Press, available in all good bookshops and online and so forth, for the wonderful Dublin Inquirer. Thank you.
Read old book, imitate occult practices, seek after the devil. Read old book, imitate occult practices, seek after the devil.